Part 5 of Where Were You When the World Died?
Groot and Ark were getting the shit beat out of them. The advanced war mech that stomped a hole in Sucker Punch was beating them both single-handedly. The mech used its air superiority to rain death on them, and it was very little either of them could do. The enemy armor picked up Groot and dropped it on a house, then jetted into the air evading retaliation. The mechs they piloted may have been big, but they were not built for war, they were built for logging, and even then they were rather outdated. Gideon saw the Sucker Punch entering the fray at a distance and he opened up comms. "Gale, turn around, we can't beat it," he said in a tone Gale thought foreign to the overly cocky Gideon. Ark had its saw out and Gideon stood his ground as the enemy Titan spun around and stopped itself in the air with its repulsors, then eagerly drew its glowing blade. "Get the fuck out of here," Gideon pleaded. Gale paused, but not because she had any intentions of retreat, but because she needed a moment to think. "You ain't got no air support," Benit said to Gale. "Understatement of the century. Get me up there. If I could smash through your view window, maybe I could smash through his," said Benit. "What if he flies straight up and tosses you off?" "Then he just does. Fuck that thing," said Benit, whose sense of spite was overriding his caution. In his mind, he had built this thing up to be the root of all the problems that had happened up to this point. "How do I get you up there?" Gale said. Benit took a second to think. "Throw me." "What?" "Throw me. I can survive a collision of up to 60 miles per hour, and if they say 60, you know that probably means 100. "Yeah, okay, but would you survive the fall?" "I already survived one today, so fuck it." Gale nodded as if she was on board. Benit nodded as if he were ready. Sucker Punch's hand cupped to catch Benit when he stepped through the window. "Don't fuck this up," Benit said to Gale. Gale smirked slyly and nodded with eyes still wet from tears. Sucker Punch lined up the throw. It was at least 200 feet away, but the enemy Titan was occupied with Ark and ripping it apart surgically. She held a man's life in her palm, figuratively and literally. Benit balled up and popped his head up like a runner taking his mark. Gale reared Sucker Punch back. With an all-or-nothing toss, Benit was flung through the air. He was not accustomed to the idea of being a hero, but very accustomed to being the one that won the game. The seconds he was in the air, he saw the mech's back. His collision detection screamed at him. Gale's toss was good. He was on course to smack onto its back, but at the last minute, it moved. Benit didn't even have enough time to cry out. The coin flip of life and death spun in his favor. The enemy Titan turned around and didn't spin away. He cracked directly onto the glass of the view window. The pain spiderwebbed. His arm went half in and half out. He could see the pilot clear as day in an all-weight outfit, hooked to a haptic suit and a gyroscopic spear to compensate for sudden movements. Benit's tech sizzled and burned, and he could smell the smell of melted and burned servos and frayed wires. The ex-football player held on for dear life. There would be no flags on the play, and there would be no second chances. Ark lost an arm and a leg. He was being picked apart slowly. This was no longer pragmatism, it was cruelty. The rival pilot suddenly put up its sword and attempted to smack at its faceplate. Before Gideon had a chance to see why it was happening, he saw Sucker Punch charging forth with its fret saw. The enemy mech attempted to fly up to evade the blow, but Ark grabbed its foot from behind, cueing Gale up for her shot. Sucker Punch's saw sank into the enemy mech's side and crunched metal. Benit nearly died when an oversized hand slammed down. If the Titan's fingers hadn't been slightly apart, he'd been a smear. He held onto the glass and punched at it with the fury of a madman. He could feel the Titan bucking to break free. Benit shattered the glass with an awesome hit that broke his arm in the process. He could feel the pressure leave it, and it hung limp. He rolled inside, cutting what remained of his human parts badly. The enemy pilot fought a war on two fronts. Gale screamed with intensity as the saw did its work. The enemy mech reached for its sword, while it tried to kick away from Ark's grip. The mech's sword came down on Sucker Punch, but inexplicably stopped and seemed as if it were fighting an invisible man. Gale went for its legs at the knee with her saw. She screamed in ecstasy, giving her a cathartic burst of much-needed violence and release. Benit was bigger than the pilot, but he was fighting his malfunctioning equipment as much as he was him. He was pantomiming a sword battle in the air with his AR rig. But Benit could guarantee he was about to get some real up-and-close face time in a moment. He charged forward, and the pilot had to prioritize defending himself in real time over the mech damage Sucker Punch threw at him. Benit grabbed the little man with his left arm faster than he could redirect a punch, and he tore the pilot out of his rig. He was strapped in with plugs all throughout his joints. He slammed the thing with one hand by the neck, and the AR goggles broke off, revealing this was not a human pilot. The enemy mech dropped as its knee was severed from its body. Gale yelled maniacal curses as the mech dropped. Suddenly, something roughly the size of a human being broke through the enemy armor's cockpit and sailed through the air. As the advanced mech was about to fall over, Gale dropped her saw and caught the thing. She carefully cut Sucker Punch's hand by the cockpit window, and Benit emerged. Gale looked to Gideon, turning Sucker Punch to face him. Though Ark was down, missing a leg and an arm, he put a thumbs up. Groot was down and Vesper hadn't answered. Before she had time to look, before she had time to put Benit down, the strange light shot straight for them as if rocket propelled. Benit saw the outlines of 3 mechs close to the model they just put down. "You got 3 coming!" Benit yelled to the pilots who still could respond. The face of their doom came in the form of 3 pristine mechs built for war, pushing the dust of a dead land from their flight path. As Gale thought to reach down and pick up her fret saw, a cannon shot came, displacing the air. The weight of the heavy blast ripped a hole in the enemy armor's hull. A second blast rang out and pushed the dust aside. 3 mechs scattered, evading a blast that came from so far out no one could see. The enemy armor shot back into the sky to regroup and reassess. Gale's comms blinked. She pushed the button cautiously. "Hey, if you're still alive, this is Cecilia Dans. Get to my bunker before they find you." The message repeated over and over with her coordinates at the end. Benit climbed into the cockpit through the broken window. "I guess it's halftime," said the ex-football player.
Wow! What an interesting story! I have many questions from that reality. What was that pilot? Was he a robot or an alien or whatever? I would like to get more stories from this reality. I will make it very simple for the listeners out there. If I get 3 comments down below, I will have my guy tell me another story about this. I am not kidding. 3! Anyways, I'm out of here. Have a great life, or whatever it is that you live. Pax says peace.